The European Union is seeking emergency powers to force businesses to stockpile key products and break contracts during a crisis such as a war in Ukraine. The move aims to help the bloc avert future supply chain breakdowns. The proposed single market emergency instrument comes in response to supply bottlenecks caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It follows similar policies adopted by the United States and Japan. A draft document on the new tool suggests penalties for companies that fail to comply. The proposal is already facing fierce pushback from businesses in several EU member states, including Belgium and Denmark. They are concerned the new tool will be, quote, too interventionist. And for more, Rosie Burchett joins us live from Brussels. Rosie, what would these proposed emergency powers entail, and under what circumstances could they then be activated?
Well, the European Commission, headquartered in this building behind me, says this plan is all about protecting the single market, which is, of course, one of the EU's most precious aspects. The single market is all about trying to ensure the free movement of goods and people. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in those early days, we saw certain countries here within the European Union shutting down their borders, and that meant that critical goods couldn't reach destinations, and also that certain cross-border workers couldn't commute to their workplaces, for example, in hospitals or factories. So that was really the genesis of these new legal proposals. That was the idea, is to avoid a repeat of those scenes witnessed in the early days of the pandemic. Now, the proposals have been laid out by the European Commission's digital chief and Executive Vice President Margrethe Vestager. First of all, it has 3 layers. The first layer is called Contingency Planning, and that's just a basic state in which the European Commission could, for example, have simulations or trainings and activate some sort of emergency warning system to anticipate potential supply crises. Then there is something called a Vigilance Phase. So that would be activated here in Brussels with the advice of a certain group of experts, an advisory group. And at that stage, the European Commission, that's the bloc's executive, could ask member states to carefully monitor the levels of certain goods deemed critical for the relevant crises, which could, for example, be medical gear or protective equipment, for example, in the case of a pandemic. And they could also request that member states and companies stockpile some of these goods. Then there's a further stage still, which is the emergency phase. That would require the backing of European Union member states. And that's the most controversial part of this plan, because within that activated phase, the European Commission is proposing that it could order businesses and manufacturers to prioritise certain orders of goods which are deemed relevant or crucial within that crisis. For example, as I mentioned, medical gear, and which could mean indeed that companies would be required to breach contracts or breach certain orders. Now, within the European Commission's proposal, companies which do not comply could face fines of up to 1.5% of daily turnover, though businesses would have the opportunity to try and explain or justify why they say they shouldn't be obliged to meet these requests. Now, the European Commission's Executive Vice President Margrethe Vestager really sought to try and quell any fears here that this may go too far. Take a listen to what she had to say.
We have thresholds for the activation of the different phases, so that the vigilance and emergency phases can only be activated when justified. Likewise, the different tools, including the strategic reserves and the priority orders, well, they will only concern goods that are of vital importance to the safety and the needs of European citizens.
That was the EU's digital chief, Rosie Burchett, reporting live to us there from Brussels.